Chapter 6. Kit. An explosion rattles the coach. I'm thrown against the seat, my ears ringing. Time slows, vision blurs. Shouting Imperials crowd around me while the slums erupt beyond their cocoon. Stone crumbles from buildings, spitting debris on those scrambling in the streets. My chest heaves with every piercing scream that wafts from the smoke. I shut my eyes. This is all my doing. Another bomb has the coach shuddering. How did we get here? Just a handful of hours ago, I was safely in my study. The morning was quiet. I spent most of it staring down at my ink-stained hand. There was no ring on my finger, but I felt the weight of my engagement nonetheless. Peyton was still so stubbornly the same girl I once knew, despite the killer she became. It had been mere days since she so selflessly accepted my proposal. The hope this former silver savior clung to was just as naive and as annoyingly admirable as ever. But her moral compass guided me to say precisely what she needed to hear. Promise of a united Ilya. Now she wore that ring like a shackle, bound to the duty she felt for this kingdom. "Your Majesty!" A healer was inspecting me, just like every morning. I looked up at him distantly. Eli's smile was tight.
"I asked if His Majesty could please turn his head to the side."
"Of course," I murmured before obliging. My gaze frequently fell to a flyer atop my desk, the same one that was distributed throughout the city. It detailed the story I spun to coax Peyton into accepting my proposal, uniting the elites and ordinaries so the surrounding cities' resumed trade was hardly motivated by resources. Though Ilya truly ran low. No, it was trusting kingdoms and open borders I craved. Eli's frigid fingers slid from my throat.
"That is all for today, my young king."
I tipped my head in thanks as the probing healers and whispering scholars slipped out of the study. A shock of disappointment coursed through me when none of the passing faces belonged to Mara. This was alarming. I was engaged when meeting the intriguing woman, and that unfortunate fact still remained. My betrothal to Peyton Gray was the price I must pay for greatness. Ironic that an ordinary would spark the spread of elites. A booming explosion startles me back to the present. I blink against the haze of smoke, my eyes watering. Kai no longer sits across from me in this coach open to the sky, pretending as though he doesn't see Peyton's knee resting against my own. Our interrupted parade was more an excuse to spend time with him than it was to celebrate my complicated engagement. And for a short time, amid that peaceful promenade through the kingdom, I nearly forgot Peyton's presence. That is, until she begged to extend the festivities to her home, just as I knew she would. Admirably predictable.
"Stay down, Your Majesty."
I duck at the Imperial's barked order, hating that I'm the only one cowering in this coach. Kai is off being the enforcer, while my bride-to-be is blatantly defying orders. She disappeared into the chaos after slipping through the wall of Imperials, leaving me here to sit in the discomfort of my decision. Alone. Forgotten. This destruction is my doing. Like a morbid symphony screams crescendo all around. I am not a monster. This had to be done. Callum agreed. That seems important to remind myself, perhaps because this guilt is not mine alone to bear. But I need disarray, a tangible defiance. The kingdom has boldly murmured their objection to an ordinary queen. I only raised their voices. The trials must commence. And this will force my betrothed into them, force her to unknowingly do my bidding. Smoke fills my lungs until I am choked on the consequences of my actions. I am not a monster. The ringing in my ears brings no reprieve from the sound of panicked horses and wailing elites. I can see nothing from where I crouch on the floor of this coach, coddled by a swarm of Imperials. The heavy crown on my head is slipping, and I'm certain I look the part of a helpless royal. I suppose that is what I am, really. A king still overshadowed by the weak brother he used to be. But not for much longer. I tear the crown off, letting it clang onto the floor beside me. This is my mess. I should at least be in the middle of it. I stand to my feet despite the Imperials' protests. The ruin I ordered sprawls before me, all crumbling stone and scrambling bodies. Ribbons of flame feast on tattered banners, devouring the carts of several merchants. The street is shrouded in a thick smoke that blurs the chaos within. But it's the scattered bodies that hold my horrified gaze. Blood coats the cobblestones. It's an obvious consequence that hadn't occurred to me. People were going to die before my plan even began. That soft part of me, the weakness Father despised, shies away at the realization of what it is I've done. In fact, I'm tempted to forfeit the fate I've meticulously crafted for myself if it means saving those in the path of my plotted destiny. And that only confirms what I already know to be true. Kit Azur needs to die. A tender heart has no place in history. It must cease beating if I wish to be great. So when a bomb erupts mere feet from me, I fear some greater power may have misunderstood my metaphor. The coach trembles, and I'm thrown to the floor with the impact. My skull meets something hard on the way down. I might have yelled, I'm not sure. The world has gone quiet. I look up at the smoky sky above. Imperials lean over the coach's sides, nudging their way into my line of sight. Their mouths move beneath the white masks they wear. There is a dull humming in my ears. I haven't the slightest clue what they are saying. In fact, I feel quite cold. My gaze drifts to the bench beside me. It is where Kai had reminisced with me during our journey from the castle. It was like we were brothers again. And I would very much like to cling to that moment, though it seems the seat has already been taken. Another figure now occupies the plush bench, legs crossed comfortably. She is slender beneath the dark cloak slung over her shoulders. Auburn hair slips just past her collarbones when she tilts her head at me. And though her eyes are what some might describe as a common brown, I doubt I've seen a pair so piercing. Mara. She stares down at me, paying no heed to the commotion beyond. Rather, she wears that look of veiled intrigue. It's as though she is waiting for something. I open my mouth to say what, I'm not sure. When the world suddenly comes rushing back, an Imperial pulls me onto the bench opposite Mara, informing me of our immediate departure. Every muffled word grows in volume until the sound of mayhem is a dull roar in my ears. I'm about to demand my brother be brought to me when his form emerges from the smoke. And while I shouldn't be surprised to see Payton held in his arms, it still manages to sting. Of course, he ensured she was okay before returning to me. I shrug off the jealousy that taps me on the shoulder, begging for a reaction. Instead, I stiffly await their return to the coach. When an Imperial throws open the door, ushering my enforcer and betrothed inside, I glance over at the healer occupying their seat. Except she no longer does. Mara is gone. I blink at the empty bench before Kai and Payton are sliding onto it. The coach begins moving before they have even settled across from me, both bloody and panting. Tears brim on Payton's gaze when it falls on the scarlet-stained hem of her dress. "What happened?" she gasps, voice breaking. Kai scans the chaos blurring past. "We can't talk now. There are ears everywhere." The coach rattles across uneven cobblestones, swerving between scattered stone. My brother's scrutiny slides to me. "Are you all right? I ensured you were surrounded by Imperials." I swallow. "I'm fine. I am a monster."
Who would do this?
Payton whispers. "A monster? A monster." My gaze snaps to Kai when he utters the words. My mind screams. No. No, he is not supposed to think that about me. Not him. This is for him. For us. He will see that soon. He has to see that. My brother's gaze falls on Payton. It always does. "This is a message." I look away. The smoking street slips past. This was a message. One I have scrawled across my life. In the plague I swallowed, the betrothal to the woman my brother wants, the pain I must cause before gifting power, there is nothing I won't do for those I love. And I only know how to love Kai. I am a monster. I am a king. Perhaps one cannot exist without the other.
Chapter 7. Mara. Death wonders how long Blair Archer can pretend to read her book. After 5 days of imprisonment within her own room, the telly remains on the same page. Mara, selfishly, finds this rather vexing, as she would very much like to continue reading over her shoulder. Although such feigned engrossment is rather clever on Blair's part, as it helps to curb Ginger Snaps, the telly's nickname, of course, appetite for constant commentary. Rather than standing outside the door, Lenny has taken a liking to joining the telly in her boredom, and subsequently, Mara's. Their relentless quarreling has thoroughly entertained Death over the past few days, complete with the mental throwing of objects and several detailed threats. Lenny manages to complain about his stiff neck nearly every hour. He sleeps on a patch of floor with the occasional gifted blanket, while Blair stares glassily at that book, blissfully ignoring him. They have yet to tear each other apart, but Death is holding out hope. It is a good thing Mara still enjoys their company, though draining at times, because she has no other souls to stalk at present. After the parade bombing, Death thought it best to adamantly avoid the king until she was prepared to answer what questions he will undoubtedly have. You see, she hadn't planned to appear under such circumstances, but Kit's immediate danger in that moment had drawn Mara to him. Their connection is one she has never experienced, for Death feels his fading soul as if it were her own. This human's demise is unique, but he need not know that. You see, Death clutches the truth closely, as it is the only thing one is allowed to bring with them into the afterlife. Blair drops the book onto her bed, sighing in relief when Lenny slips from her room for the second time this evening. He drinks a lot of water, and the telly has banned him from using her washroom. So Death settles onto the comforter beside her and watches the sun slowly sink beyond the line of windows. She finds this rather peaceful, but Blair's scowl at the sight seems to indicate otherwise. Ah, Mara understands. Unlike the rumors, she is not entirely void of empathy. Life is slowly slipping by, without the telly. She seems to blame herself for this, as though such a punishment is deserved. Mara often wonders about this young woman, who she is and what she wishes to become. Blair Archer is a mystery that Death intends to solve. The telly throws a pillow over her head. If Mara were to guess, she often does when it comes to humans, it seems to her like Blair is attempting to smother a memory. This theory is only confirmed when the telly sits up suddenly, gasping for air. Death blinks at the outburst. Then, at the look of defiance Blair summons to her features. The bizarre woman clasps her hands together, swallows thickly. Mara watches her pick mindlessly at the skin on her left palm. It is a habit she's observed before. Yes, what is it that haunts a woman of such formidability? The distant sound of someone approaching draws the attention of both Blair and the shadow of Death beside her. Click, click, click. The telly rolls her eyes, fervently. She seems to know this approaching person. The realization summons a short woman with unnaturally stern expressions. She throws open the door. She, too, must have a key, and clicks toward Blair in a pair of tall heels. Unacceptable! Cropped brown hair swishes with the declaration. Absolutely unacceptable. Mara flicks her gaze between the women. Their scowls alone bear enough resemblance to deem them related. This must be the telly tyrant's mother. Again, not Death's nickname. Blair swipes up the book to continue her charade of reading. This should be good, she mocks. Not particularly close with her mother, Death gathers. It has been 5 days, Blair. Based on the telly's hardening expression, it seems the use of her name is hardly a good thing. 5 days that should have been spent training and apprenticing with your father. The woman seethes. Her heels click against the floor until she is looming over the bed. But no, you are trapped in this room because even the king thinks you can't handle an ordinary. She meets her daughter's gaze before landing the final blow. And he is right. To Blair's credit, she keeps her head high and her mouth shut. It seems the woman despises a lack of reaction, so she happily spits more malice into the silence. I didn't raise you to be weak. Really? Blair finally snaps. Because weakness runs in your blood, not mine. It happens so quickly, the slap across Blair's face. Even Death is startled by this mother's willingness to strike her own daughter, though not entirely surprised. It is those closest to us who are often most cruel. Mara knows this firsthand, for she, too, had been wronged. But Death was quick to remedy that grave error. The force of that strike has the telly's head whipping to the side. And yet, she still manages to emanate that typical smugness. For it was she who struck the harder blow. The woman breathes heavily beside Mara while her daughter's cheek grows red and splotchy. Blair stares up at her mother, decidedly unafraid. It is a look that has likely been well practiced over the years. "I won't let your inadequacy ruin this family," the woman declares. "You will continue our legacy." Blair forces a biting smile. "I'll disgrace us all." "Then you will have proved me right." The woman's tone is smug. Death sees where Blair gets it from. "And I know how much you hate that." They glare at each other, displaying the harshness they share. A long moment passes in which they revel in their joint animosity. Then the Telly's mother clicks her heels toward the open door. "Oh, and that ordinary is engaged to the king," she says over a shoulder. "If she becomes queen, you will answer to her, and she will never set you free." Engaged? This is news to Death. Blair blows out a shaky breath when her mother finally strides from the room. She then lifts a hand to her stinging cheek, anger flooding her features. "Well, she seems lovely." The Imperial's sarcasm only has Blair rolling her watering eyes. He steps hesitantly into the room, his brow creasing beneath that white mask. "Does she always speak to you that way?" Now his tone is genuine. "This human is kind," Mara observes, not for the first time. His soul is warm, inviting, the type that will be mourned. This thought has something within her, long dead and cold, twinging with jealousy. With a deep breath, the Telly wipes all emotion from her features, straightens her spine, lifts her chin. "Why don't you just eavesdrop on our next conversation to see how it compares?" "No, I wouldn't do that." Lenny sounds offended. "I only heard because the door was open, but I wouldn't go out of my way to invade the little privacy you now have." "So," Blair starts, disinterested, "you have super hearing but don't use it to eavesdrop?" Mara is beginning to understand this hyper ability of his. Such possession of power is used loosely, remember. The Imperial folds his arms over the rumpled uniform he slept in. Death has begun to realize that he owns little else. "Not if I don't want to. It's like a dial," he explains distantly. "I can turn my senses up or down whenever I want." This still does not explain how he recognized Mara's presence. Yet another mystery for her to decipher. Blair's gaze flicks back to the book she is still pretending to read. How disappointing. "Yeah, we get it," Lenny sighs out in defeat. "I have a shitty power." "Well, yes." The Telly doesn't bother looking at him. "But it's even more disappointing that you aren't using said shitty power to your advantage." The Imperial simply stares at her. "Oh." "I have fun with my ability all the time." The words have hardly left her lips before that purple ball Lenny so loves to bounce is hitting him in the face once again. "See? This object is frequently materializing to cause bodily harm," Death observes quietly. "I know what you're doing," the Imperial declares while rubbing his forehead. "You're deflecting. Why won't you talk to me about your mom?" "Because she's a bitch," Blair answers simply. Lenny snorts. "Must run in the family." "No." The Telly snaps her book shut. "We are made this way." The Imperial voices Death's confusion. "Are you referring to, bitches in general, or—" "If you're so concerned about my relationship with my mother," Blair bites, "help me escape it. Our deal is almost up." "About that." Lenny sits on the edge of the bed, ignoring the abhorrent look on the Telly's face. Mara sits beside him, and to her veiled disappointment, no one objects. "I ran into Peyton on her way to dinner with the king, and," he chuckles darkly, "she still very much hates you." "Obviously," Blair snaps. "You tell me that instead of mentioning they are engaged? With how much you talk, I at least figured the important stuff would slip out." Lenny smiles timidly. "Right. Sorry about that. I forget you don't have the shitty ability that allows you to overhear conversations." His words tumble out in a rush. See, the day we started this unfortunate assignment, Pei came and visited me outside your door. I figured you heard the commotion she caused trying to get to you, and our conversation about the engagement. Well, I didn't. The Telly swallows her snarl. What the hell is Kit doing marrying that ordinary? The right thing, Lenny supplies. Despite Ilya needing resources, uniting the elites and ordinaries is the right thing to do. And Peyton can help do that. Of course you would feel that way. There is a sharp edge to her voice. You are practically an ordinary yourself. Fine, the Imperial admits. I may be next to ordinary, but you're the one who is trapped in this room, powerless. A fine point, Mara thinks. She finds herself continually rooting for this young man. Even death has deemed him quite enjoyable. Powerless? Blair scoffs. She is, regrettably, a bit harder to enjoy. Smugly, she adds, I can walk out that door whenever I like. So why didn't you? Lenny throws his hands up in exasperation. No one was stopping you from running away until a few days ago. You had your whole life to leave, but you didn't. Mara flicks her gaze between them. The Imperial's expression remains earnest, imploring. But the Telly wears a mask much colder, cutting. It is as though she wavers on the edge of something egregiously irreversible, like a terrible truth sits on the tip of her tongue. Finally, she settles on a deflecting demand. What is the plan? The shadow of sadness that darkens Lenny's face does not go unnoticed by Death. He wishes to understand this temperamental Telly, bridge the cavern between them. But Blair refuses to meet him halfway. Humans are such difficult creatures, Mara has come to remember. They have a nasty habit of making everything exceedingly harder for themselves. Fine, Lenny sighs, but you're not going to like it. That's hardly surprising. The Imperial paces a crooked path across the floor. Okay, well, as I mentioned, Peyton wants you dead. You want to flee Ilya without anyone looking for you. And I want to still have some dignity left by the time we're done with this. If you had any to begin with, Blair sneers beneath her breath. You know what? Lenny shakes his head. You are almost funny, Blair Archer. If only you used your powers for good. She almost smiles at that. Death nearly does as well. The moment is fleeting. So, the Telly huffs, get on with the plan, Ginger Snap. All right. He looks slightly concerned for his safety. Blair seems to relish the sight. Death is thoroughly enjoying herself. So, Peyton kind of needs to kill you.
Chapter 8. Kit. A splotch of ink mars my white sleeve. Sighing, I dab at it with a handkerchief. This only smears the stain more thoroughly, forcing me to shrug on my suit coat and smother it. Then I loosen the tie around my throat before returning to the task at hand. A blank piece of parchment sits atop the cluttered desk, awaiting the spillage of my thoughts. I had already filled the one prior with a recent and complicated discovery, because that is how I manage my muddled mind. Hastily, with a flurry of scribbled letters, and yet the nib of my pen hovers over this pristine page. I cannot seem to find the right words to describe her. Perhaps there aren't any. Clearing my throat, I figure it's best to start at the beginning. My pen meets the page. I met a woman named Mara. She was in my study, but I pull back suddenly, blinking at the freshly carved words now fading before my very eyes. Awed, I watch each letter shy away from the page. They disappear slowly, as though the parchment is greedily swallowing each trail of ink. Then, as if I'd never written a word. The page returns to its spotless state. Several seconds pass before I remember to take a breath. What the hell happened? I mutter, half expecting the magical paper to respond. Hesitantly, I try out another string of words. Mara was in my coach during the parade bombing. I don't know how or the ink vanishes. I lean back in my chair, utterly bewildered. There is some reasonable explanation for this. There has to be. I shuffle through my piles of parchment, scattering scribbled notes in every direction. On the corner of a crumpled document, I scrawl, "Who is Mara?" The words drift away. Hastily, I pull another page from the stack. This time, I only bother etching her name. Then I watch the 4 letters disappear. I'm suddenly scribbling those 4 letters on every surface, madly, incessantly. Mara. 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 Nothing. 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 It's as though she doesn't exist. As though the letters rebel against the very idea of her. I run a hand down my face. Perhaps I really am going mad like everyone so readily believed at the beginning of my reign. I stare at the first page that rejected Mara's name. Then, tentatively, I press my pen to the picky parchment once again. Kit. Nothing. Nothing happens. And that means something. The word remains. I stare down at my name. It looks entirely unremarkable. I try a sentence next. I am in my study. When the words don't disappear, I suddenly become aware of how ridiculous this all is. I'm glaring at curls of ink as though they are about to jump off the page. I'm just seeing things. To prove my own insanity, I lazily scrawl one final sentence. I'm going to figure out who Mara is. All evidence of my message slips away. And though I'm not entirely sure I am of sound mind, there is no denying the blank page before me. I might have called a witness into the room if my lungs hadn't tightened to the point of pain. The foreign feeling startles me, enough so to have a cough rattling in my chest. That is when the chill skitters down my spine. I have felt it before. It's a sort of tugging at my soul, a presence of something infinitely more. I look up from the page where her name refused to remain, and there Mara stands. Her auburn hair falls effortlessly atop the dark cloak blanketing her figure. As stoic as ever, she drags her piercing gaze over me. Sharing your thoughts with paper again? Trying to, I say slowly, my skepticism evident. What are you doing here? Seeing if you are well. You're a thorough healer. I hold her unwavering stare. There is that intrigued hum of hers. Are you going somewhere? When her eyes flick over me, I'm suddenly reminded that I have somewhere to be. Oh, yes. There is a gathering while we wait to see if Payton completes the first of her trials. Trials? She says the word like it's the punchline of a joke I missed.
Elites do love displaying the power of death.
Confusion creases my brow. The purging trials aren't meant to kill the contestants. She seems to find this interesting as well.
What about these trials? Are they meant to rid you of your betrothed?
Not yet. She is useful to me. I am unable to stop the words before they come careening out of my mouth. Wow! I nearly laugh, in shock at the despicable truth. You must think I'm a horrible person.
No.
Mara eyes me closely.
You are much more complicated than that.
I clear my throat when that clenching feeling returns to my lungs. And with every cough, that eerie presence, that beckoning of my very soul grows. I lift my gaze to the watchful woman, and something cowers within me.
Who are you?
My murmured words don't seem to surprise her. I doubt little would.
We have already met.
You were in that coach when the bomb erupted, I blurt. I know you were. Every bit of my stifled confusion comes spilling out. Now you're here, and I get this tightening in my chest. My skepticism is met with silence. I can feel you. My tone grows urgent, like a pair of eyes on me from across the room or a cool breeze on the back of my neck. So tell me who you are, Mara. I stand slowly from my seat, with palms braced against the desk. Because you're not a healer.
No.
She agrees simply.
I'm not. You are the one who determined I was.
I shake my head in frustration and feel the crown atop it begin to slip. I don't understand. Just help me understand. How are you always here when I am
dying?
My mouth parts as I stare at her. If the pensive look on her face ever budged, I might have thought she was joking. Dying? No, I'm not.
You were 6 feet from death at the parade.
She cuts in evenly.
6.
My chest heaves. Why were you there? I saw you on that bench, and then you just vanished. She tilts her head at me, as though she pities my ignorance.
6 feet is close enough to warrant my presence. And every time you cough, the plague is inching you closer to me.
Exasperation makes me desperate. Who the hell are you? Her dark eyes bore into mine.
You're asking the wrong question.
My blood chills. Lungs tighten. Soul slips. Why can't I write about you? I fight to keep my voice even. Your name. It just disappears.
I cannot be contained.
She says this as though it should be obvious.
Not by language or time.
What the hell are you? I breathe.
I thought you wanted to see me.
Her face is unreadable.
Why else would you take the plague?
For power, I say sternly.
Or die knowing you tried everything to get it.
It feels as though the room is spinning around me. You thought I took the plague to see you. My voice is hoarse. That would mean... I watch a soft smile pull at her lips for the first time.
Now, 1.5 feet separates you from death.
I blink at the beautiful woman before me. She stands on the other side of my desk, 1.5 feet away. I attempt a weak laugh. That's absurd.
You live in a kingdom that was magically blessed with powers from a plague. And you don't even bother to ask why?
She reminds plainly.
Death should hardly be shocking.
It's not death I'm unfamiliar with. I stammer. I gesture to the length of her. It's you. Her brows lift ever so slightly.
Surely you've seen a woman before?
I pinch the bridge of my nose, just as Father used to. Yes, I've seen a woman before. Just never one that claimed to be death. Mara considers this for a long moment.
I retrieved your father's soul from outside the arena. He had a stab wound to his chest and throat. His soul was rather stubborn.
She stares at me intently, as though her words haven't just paralyzed me. Why? I swallow. Why are you telling me this?
I don't get to have many conversations with the living. Or the mostly living.
She amends. I can do little else.
You are doing wonderfully listening, feeling, imagining. Now, let the melody give you a gentle rest before we continue.
But gawk at her. This is insanity, and yet I indulge it. If this is truly death, I don't wish to have her as an enemy.
You are not afraid of me,
Mara observes. A knock at the door nearly makes me jump. Your Majesty, it's time for your entrance. An Imperial calls from the hallway. My chest heaves. In a moment. I turn my attention back to Mara. Death, something. She offers the most subdued of smiles. No, this cannot be the same death that strikes fear into every beating heart.
Go live,
She urges softly.
while you still can.
And just like her name on a page, she vanishes without a trace.
Chapter 9. Mara. Thump, thump, thump. The ball Lenny consistently bounces against the wall has deflated slightly. Even it has grown tired of his games. Occasionally, the Imperial stops to stare longingly out the row of windows. Above, the moon glares back, glowing brightly against the blackened sky. That streaming, pale light pools in the concern carved on Lenny's freckled brow. And for the better part of an hour, Death has occupied herself by watching that worry only deepen. This is hardly the most interesting part of her day. No, that would have been when she entered the king's study as Mara and left as Death. And she is not entirely sure what to do with that. No soul has ever met Death and lived to tell the tale. Perhaps, then, Mara should take advantage of this rarity. Blair turns a page of her book, shockingly, from where she lounges in bed. You are suspiciously quiet? Well? Lenny doesn't turn to face her flaunting of comfort, and instead continues to sit stiffly on the floor, leaning against her bedpost. Since you want to crush my windpipe every time I speak, I figured it was safer if I didn't. Maybe you aren't as dumb as you look, she says, rather sincerely. The Imperial shakes his head and returns to his boredom. Thump, thump, thump. Blair clears her throat. Have the festivities started? Mara gets the sense that this Telly is unsure what to do with a melancholy Lenny. He appeases her with a dull, "Yup, they are happily drinking and gossiping." The party is taking place on the other side of the castle. This hyper-ability is fascinating, Death admits. She's going to be fine, Blair huffs reluctantly. Slowly, Lenny turns to peer at his assignment over the bed. That is when those brown eyes drag over Death yet again. If she had a heartbeat, it might have stumbled. Wow. The hyper rests his chin on the quilt, looking up at Blair. He is completely oblivious to the spiral he sent Mara into. Are you complimenting Peyton's strength and skill to survive this trial? The Telly scowls at him. No, I'm simply stating that somehow she always ends up getting what she wants. Come on, Blair. Lenny returns a dull look. Her father died. She was forced to survive on the streets. Exactly, she says a bit quickly. She was free. She got to do whatever she pleased, and then one day she made it into the same purging trials that some of us have prepared for our whole lives. But not just that. She laughs, and the sound is bitter. No, she managed to get away with the fact that she is an ordinary, excelled in the trials, toyed with both princes. Then she was discovered as a traitor, killed the king, and fled. The words gush out of her, as though a dam has broken free behind her tongue. And just like everyone else, Blair continues with a humorless laugh, I thought she wouldn't get away with it. But here we are. Peyton Gray is now engaged to a king. Yes, Death really must meet this woman. Is that why you've always hated her? Lenny murmurs carefully. Blair sighs. I envy her, okay? She is free. The words are hollow. Besides, she is precisely who my mother wishes I was. Without the ordinary bit, obviously. That is... The Imperial shakes his head at her. Very human of you. Lenny then steals a moment to simply look at the woman before him. Mara watches him take in the simple blouse she wears, the fitted pants beneath, and the intimidating expression above. Death can see it on his face, the slow realization that there might be a softness smothered beneath. Suddenly aware of her sincerity, Blair morphs back into that unfeeling shell of herself. Shut up, Ginger Snap. Such kindness you exude, Lenny says warmly. Reverting back to their usual bickering, he leans over the bed to tap the spine of her book. Hey, what is it you're always reading? Death would like to know as well. It seems she will have to find her own copy to discover what awaits on the next page. None of your business, Blair snaps. Interesting title. That's it. She snaps the book shut. Dramatic, since she wasn't actually trying to read it. I'm leaving. Lenny watches her stand from the bed's warm embrace. Where do you think you're going? Loot, she informs. I'm sick of this room. And you. Death follows curiously, leaning over Blair's shoulder when she stops before the fireplace. It's rather unassuming, this stone hearth, though it lies empty and cold. The telly fixes her attention on a slab of smooth stone that stretches beneath the fireplace. It groans when she mentally swings it open, revealing a dark shaft behind. Lenny gapes at the shadowed passageway. Holy shit, he murmurs. So this is how you escaped? Death shifts closer. The cramped space can hardly fit the small, spiraling staircase that descends into total darkness. Lenny sticks his head through the open doorway to peer down the stairs, and the look on Blair's face suggests she is contemplating pushing him. Yes, the telly admits begrudgingly. The stairs lead to the tunnels beneath the castle. These hidden passageways were built into most of the larger rooms and were used as an escape route, back when Ilya was weak and on the verge of being conquered. She educates flippantly. Now they are hardly used, just like the tunnels. Lenny nods slowly. So, how does it... Blair sighs as though she doesn't love proving that she's smarter than him. This is the flue, she points to the hidden shaft. It is quite large to accommodate the many fireplaces littered throughout the castle. Adjacent rooms also have access to this stairwell, and it's completely enclosed until dropping into a tunnel. The Imperial pulls his head from the fireplace. Despite your condescending tone, he mutters, that was actually very informative. Thank you. It was. Death quite enjoyed the lesson. She is always looking for something to learn, even in her old age, which a lady would never reveal, of course. So, Lenny continues, folding his arms over that wrinkled uniform, how did you find out about this? I knew there were all sorts of secret passages in the castle. Everybody does. But no one really knows where half of them are anymore. My father told me, Blair answers curtly. As a general, he obviously knows what escape routes are in the castle. So he told you how to sneak out? Lenny smiles in that boyish way. Mara finds it rather adorable. Then she supposes that the formidable Death shouldn't use such words. She has a reputation to uphold. I didn't realize your pops was so easygoing. He's not, the telly corrects hotly. But even he realized that I might need an escape every once in a while. That seems to mellow the Imperial. From your mother? Blair glares at him, teetering on the irreversible something, remember. She doesn't deign to say a word before grabbing a dusty lantern from the mantel. Then, with a smug smile that looks surprisingly difficult to summon, the telly ducks into the dark passageway. Blair! Lenny scrambles after her. You can't leave. Her patronizing response is a distant echo. Try to stop me, Ginger Snap. Mara watches the Imperial tip his head toward the ceiling, as one might when praying for strength to whoever will listen. Fine, he calls. I'm coming with you. Plagues help me, she mutters. I heard that. I know. Their voices fade into the darkness, leaving Death to her own devices. Though intrigued by this defiant adventure, Mara hardly feels the need to endure the journey there with them. She has already walked that long path once before, and if she weren't already dead, she might not have survived their incessant arguing. No, Death will simply meet them there. She is living, metaphorically speaking, breathing, again, not quite, power. Of course, outside the moors, she is limited. But the simple willing of time and space to appear beside a bickering pair of souls is certainly doable. Now, with the time she will save not walking, Mara decides to join the festivities. Contrary to popular belief, Death is quite capable of having fun. She can regularly be found among a grove of trees within the moors, swapping stories of the living for gossip about the souls. But tonight, Mara must be discreet. She never imagined there would come a time when she didn't wish to be seen. But the king now knows more about her than any other being, a horrifyingly invigorating thought. So, Regrettably, Death believes it best to avoid him until she devises a better plan. How very mature of her. Upon entering the crowded ballroom, Mara becomes immediately aware of how underdressed she is for the occasion. Her dark cloak is plain and worn in the face of such finery. Of course, Death is not opposed to silk and frills. She is a woman who appreciates pretty things, after all. But her occupation demands a certain dullness. Souls would hardly take her serious in a pretty pink. Perhaps that is precisely why she should don such femineity. Mara already earns a wide array of disbelief and demeaning jokes from most men she drags to the moors. But the eventual look of horror, usually following the acceptance that, holy shit, this really is Death, is well worth the wait. And the delicate ensemble would make that moment all the more delicious. It is a relief to be unseen by those in sparkling jewels and glittering gowns, as Mara would turn every head in her gloomy attire. Though there is one within this throng of gossipers who would undoubtedly recognize the face of Death. Again, how strangely exhilarating. And he sits stiffly upon a throne at the ballroom's opposite end. Kit Azar is a creature of habit, Mara is beginning to realize. He may be king, but he much prefers his study to peacocking before a court. His face remains impressively blank, an oddity for one usually so expressive. But this is likely due to Death's impromptu visit. The king's mind must be reeling behind those green eyes, and Mara must avoid them for the evening. She finds this objective oddly disappointing. Mara slinks along the room's perimeter, clinging to the wall. Laughter echoes all around from those convinced this paid-in grey will fail tremendously. Though Death does not know this woman, she grows rather irked on her behalf. It is a rampant commonality, this feeling of being underestimated. So Mara waits. This woman seems worth it. And when the grand pair of doors swings open, every head turns to behold the belittled. Paid-in grey strides into the room, bloody and triumphant. Several strands of her silver hair are stained scarlet. Cuts pepper her muddy skin, displayed beneath the torn clothing clinging to her. She places a broken crown atop her head. A queen to be. An underestimation to be reckoned with. Mara was wrong. She does indeed know this woman. In the purging trials, a stab wound to her abdomen, Death was there. In the scorches, exhausted and on the brink of consciousness, Death was there. In a dark sewer, swelling with water and drowning out hope, Death was there. This soul is no stranger to ruin. Mara has been summoned to her side more times than she can remember, and yet this woman always manages to live. It's astonishing, really. Death has begun to dread the day this soul finally loses her grip on the tightrope she has dangled from for so long. Now she has a name. Paid-in grey, Death's most elusive soul. It glows a bright silver in her chest, shimmering like the hair above, now stained with blood. Pure. Fierce. Every soul tells a story, and hers is riddled with perseverance. Mara watches her stride toward the king. Yes, she looks forward to meeting Paid-in grey again, in this life and the next. Chapter 10. Mara. Lenny fails to notice Death's sudden presence beside him on Lute's uneven cobblestone. She finds herself a bit disappointed by this. Mara was hoping her absence was felt, though unsurprised. Alas, the Imperial is far too engrossed by the telly accompanying him. He watches Blair take in the moonlit slums, disdain carving a path through her stony expression. This does not sit well with Lenny. "If you hate the slums so much," he remarks curtly, "why did you want to come here?" Blair flashes him a look of disgust. "I don't hate the slums." Oh, really? The Imperial chuckles dryly. Everything about you says otherwise. I've pretended to hate it here, she snaps. Even now, I'm only angry because I never got to have this. This? Lenny gestures toward the street, littered with meandering souls. Blair, these people would give anything to have what you were handed. Mara, who knows most things and feels a great deal more, adamantly agrees with this. You think I don't know that? The words aren't nearly as biting as she intends. Still, I would give anything to live how I please, love who I please. But I can't, and I don't, because I'm trapped. The Imperial stares at her. Death does the same beside him. Blair. A looming figure steps before them, blocking the path. The man can't be any older than Lenny, though it is clear which one of them was blessed with a towering physique, in Mara's trivial opinion. His broad shoulders lift with each breath, muscles straining beneath his black tunic and vest. Moonlight sharpens his cheekbones and highlights the scar slicing through his lips. A silver streak mars his wavy black hair, and, distantly, Death thinks one of his arms is the size of her leg. Lenny clears his throat, perhaps intending to take charge as the Imperial in this situation. But Blair beats him to it, sounding rather bored, in fact. Can we help you? Yes. The stranger's deep voice chills the air. I've been looking for you, Blair Archer. Damn, he even sounds cool, Lenny mutters in awe. Death's lips twitch, though the gesture is seen by no one. Curious, she takes a peek at this man's soul. The dull orange she's greeted with is surprising. Blair looks magnificently unimpressed, so her Imperial attempts to follow suit. Look, Lenny starts. You seem lovely, but we have somewhere to be, so if you don't mind... An invisible force knocks him aside, suddenly. Mara's brows lift in surprise. This is a rare show of expression from her. Lenny stumbles back, nearly losing his footing as the man says, I'm not here for you. Another telly, then. This should be rather interesting. Blair stands her ground, as condescending as ever. If it's money you want, I suggest trying to rob someone else. Not money. The man's menacing form towers over her. But a debt is owed. Blair, Lenny warns as he scrambles back to her side. Don't do anything. And what are you going to do about it? Stupid. The Imperial finishes weakly. The man's nostrils flare in response to Blair's condescension. For a moment, his dark eyes seem to cut right through to her swirling soul. And within that pocket of time, Death thinks he might just walk away. Then she hears a soft gasp. Mara's gaze flicks back to Blair, finding her still wearing that stony facade. But her skin begins to pale. Her eyes water. Lenny swallows. Blair? A sickening, gasping sound slips past her lips. She lifts a hand to her neck. The stranger is choking her. And yet, she refuses to break the man's stare. Death can feel it in her chest, the hum of a life thread splintering, right where a beating heart would be. She feels drawn to Blair, as she does when an endangered soul is in her vicinity. A connection is being forged between them, something tangible and final. Blair! Lenny is shaking her shoulders now. Then he turns to shout with desperation at the man. Why are you doing this? Let her go! With a thought from the stranger, Lenny is thrown back several feet to collide with a merchant's cart. He curses, crashing into a display of fabrics before toppling to the ground. Groaning, the Imperial braces his palms against the cobblestone to push himself into a more dignified position. A rasped cry has him stiffening. Mara turns to find Blair hovering several feet above the ground, struggling against a fellow Telly's power. You killed her. The man looks up at Blair's hanging body, his hand outstretched. You used this very power to drive a branch through her back. Her back. He, too, must wish to avenge the mysterious, murdered friend. Lenny limps toward him. Death is unsure as to what he could possibly do, and the Imperial looks to be thinking the same. Yet, he does not stop. She is gone because of you, the man breathes. And despite the darkness, the grief that consumes him is visible. It dwells in his hollow gaze, his trembling voice. He didn't just know this woman. He loved her. It all makes sense to Mara now. Loving is the gravest danger one can put themselves in. Those you hold dear will inevitably slip from between your grasping fingers. Death isn't pessimistic. She is experienced. It is revenge, an inescapable blight, that drives the stranger to hurl his lover's killer into the wall of a crumbling building. Blair! She does not move at the sound of Lenny's cry. He runs toward her, limping as fast as he can. Death follows with the telly in tow, now plucking a small knife from his belt. The Imperial can do nothing to stop this vindictive stranger as he sends that blade cutting through the dense darkness. A heartbeat later, Mara assumes, it tears through the flesh of Blair's shoulder, right below the birthmark hidden by her tunic. Death only knows this intimate detail because she caught Lenny's gaze tracing it the night before. The Imperial trips in his haste to reach her, skidding to a stop beside her slumped form. She stirs in pain, her face pale and peppered with cuts. Lenny drops to his knees. She is troublesomely limp against the wall, though still alive. Death's connection to her has not yet fully formed. You're okay, he reassures, likely to himself. Steel sings from behind, cutting through the Imperial's words when the stranger pulls a sword from its sheath. You killed her, he growls. Now I will kill you. No! Lenny stands to his feet, looking ready to throw himself at the towering man. Perhaps their reaching souls aren't entirely absurd, Death thinks reluctantly. This hyper seems ready to risk his life for the one he has deemed a telly tyrant. How annoyingly fascinating. The stranger raises a hand, intending to throw Lenny from his feet. The Imperial braces himself for another mental shove, one that never comes. Instead, it is this new telly who is thrown backward. The pommel of his sword sinks into the soft skin beneath his eye, hard enough to promise a bruise. Mara watches him hit the ground with a thud. Disturbing the darkness, his large body sprawls atop the cobblestone. Lenny stares down at his hands in astonishment. It was me, idiot, Blair pants, wiping blood from her nose. Right. Lenny crouches beside her. Of course it was. She lacks the strength to roll her eyes at him, but the sentiment is there. Breathing heavy, she calls out to the telly, now picking himself up off the ground. This is between you and me. Leave Gingersnap out of it. The Imperial winces slightly. Well, that was almost really touching. Shut up, Blair rasps. They do make the most interesting pair. Obediently pressing his lips together, Lenny helps pull her into a more comfortable position before the telly is standing over them once again. Mara leans against the wall, having found the perfect vantage point to continue observing the chaos. Her services may yet be needed. The stranger's eye waters, but the gaze he pins on Blair is unwavering. If that is your final wish, so be it. Moonlight glints off the steel sword. It arcs through the air, flashing above them. Blair doesn't move. She only stares up at the face of revenge. Death feels her lifeline grow taut. The Moors will happily welcome another soul. But it is the Imperial, presumably weak and woefully bearing the brunt of every joke, who dives in front of the swinging blade. Get out of the way! It's the stranger who bellows this after barely being able to redirect the steel. Lenny, his eyes still squeezed shut, is practically sitting in Blair's lap in a bewildering attempt to shield her body. Slowly, he peeks up at the fuming man. That gleaming tip of steel is now steadily aimed at the Imperial's heart. "I said," the man growls in frustration, "get out of the way." "No," Lenny swallows. "Death is too kind for her." Mara tilts her head. Is she too kind for Blair? She does not think too long on this. Death is simply pleased to be included in the conversation. "You want her to suffer just like you're suffering," the Imperial continues in a rush. "And she already is. Hell, she's stuck with me every day." The man doesn't lower his sword. "If you kill her, she will be free from this life she hates more than anything. And besides," he breathes, "I didn't know Adina personally, but I think she would have objected to you killing people on her behalf." Adina. Death remembers the name of every soul she has ever gathered. Now she knows exactly of whom they speak. Mara recalls scooping the vibrant soul from a stretch of bloody sand. She was quiet, Adina, in a way that suggested she often wasn't when alive. But most memorable of all, she was not afraid. Peace itself was relieved to find her. "Let Blair live," the Imperial murmurs. He holds the man's gaze. "It's the most pain you could offer her." A long moment passes. Death thinks fondly of that sunny soul. There is a sudden flash of steel. The sword drops from Lenny's throat. "For Adina," the man chokes. And then he disappears into the night. Lenny is much sturdier than Death previously gave him credit for. He carries Blair with little sign of strain, her head lolling against his starchy shoulder. "Almost there," he murmurs. "Almost where, Lenny?" The telly's question is more slurred than assertive. "No insulting nickname?" He picks up his pace. Death is then forced to do the same, thoroughly jostling the wounded girl in his arms. "You really are hurt." Blair tries again, these words more biting. "Where are you taking me?" Mara has been wondering just that. She looks to Lenny, awaiting his answer. "To my house?" "You mean," Blair begins hoarsely, "you live with a bunch of sweaty Imperials by choice?" Death follows her escort around a corner as he says, "Those sweaty Imperials are worth the luxury of living in a castle." Blair groans with as much scorn as she can muster. "Yes, but you have a curfew. Do you get tucked into bed too?" "I know you're making fun of me right now, but I would not object to a nightly tuck-in." "Of course you wouldn't," Blair mumbles. They turn another corner and Death comes to an abrupt halt. In another lifetime, her heart would have been pounding. Mara drags her gaze over the cluster of gnarled trees that crowd a rickety house. Their branches are intertwined, weaving around one another in an infinite embrace. This is that patch of earth, the one Death has been avoiding since her return to Ilia. Those trees were once thriving, so tall they seemed to scrape the sky with their branches. Now they curl with time, decaying from the horrors they have witnessed. But the flimsy home Lenny strides toward is mercifully unfamiliar. Mara forces her feet forward. She stops before the worn door. A pile of sand adorns the step beneath. Death refuses to feel, just as the living assume of a heinous creature such as she. "Whose house is this?" The Imperial kindly answers Blair's question. "It's mine now, but Ma and I used to live here. Now," he sets the limp telly down. "Can you stand for a second?" "Yes, I know how to stand, Ginger Snap." "Ah, sounds like someone is already feeling better." Lenny tugs at a faded pink ribbon around his neck. Mara, to her dismay, has failed to notice it peeking out from beneath the collar of his uniform. An iron key hangs at the end of it, intricate and decorated with swirling metal. After shoving it hastily into a lock, he then shoulders open the door. Home sweet home, Lenny sighs. He moves to slide an arm around Blair. Don't, she snarls. I don't need your help. Palms raised, the Imperial steps aside. Suit yourself. The Telly lifts her chin. This must make her terribly dizzy, because she immediately stumbles into the doorframe. Lenny clears his throat. Sure you don't need... Just get me inside, Blair seethes. He swiftly obeys, wrapping a hesitant arm around his assignment's waist. She leans heavily on him as they step into what is generously deemed a home. It's a glorified shack, really, with its slatted roof and lack of furniture. Mara surveys the shadowed space and finds only an inkling of relief. No piece of the past lingers here. Where is your mother now? Blair asks, easing herself onto a stiff cot decorating the floor. Lenny visibly shudders as he crouches before her. Feels wrong to think of her as mother. Seems so cold and formal. It is, she responds dully. Not all of us are blessed with a ma. Right. He nods slowly. I guess I'm pretty lucky then. But Ma is indoor now, sheltering elites whose powers are too weak to safely remain in Ilya, because of multiple ordinary ancestors, he clarifies. Death thoroughly enjoys talk of these elites and ordinaries. It is quite fun, as though she is the only one laughing at an untold joke. Lenny rifles through the bundle of clothing beside his bleary-eyed assignment on the cot. Okay, nothing is broken, right? I feel like you would be even less pleasant if that were the case. No, nothing is broken. Mara is a bit disappointed by her lack of retort. In fact, upon further study, it seems the Telly is rather defeated. If Death were to wager a guess, and of course she will, it would be that Blair Archer is unused to pain. She doesn't let anyone get close enough to hurt her. That borrowed ability is the only defense she knows, and when that is stripped away, she is weak. Or rather, just as she was meant to be. Good, Lenny says, relieved. Now, I just need to bandage you up until we can discreetly get a healer to your room. I'm not really sure how to go about doing that, but... Are you capable of thinking these thoughts inside your head? Blair grinds out between her teeth. Because you're making mine pound harder. Ah, yes, let's start there. He is completely unbothered by her biting words. This only annoys Blair further. His fingers brush her forehead, startling the Telly. What the hell are you doing? Trying to help, he says slowly. Hesitantly, he swipes a strand of tangled hair from her eyes. There. Now I can see that gash on your temple. Mara takes a seat on the lumpy cot. They may be here a while. Why are you helping me? Blair demands. Lenny tears a strip of fabric from the pile of abandoned clothing. Aside from it kind of being my job? His eyes flick over a glaring Blair. Why didn't you fight that Telly? She grinds her teeth together. Death can hear it. I did. No, the Imperial corrects. You didn't. Not really. I could hear your heart. It only slowed, like you accepted my fate? Blair finishes curtly. Her voice is steady. That man is the second person who wants me dead for what I did in that arena. Maybe it's time to admit they have a point. Lenny stares at her. The moon slips through those slits in the roof, trickling dull light across his face. He wears the type of look that begs to be analyzed, picked apart until each layer of emotion is on display. But even Mara does not know what it is he's thinking, feeling, is or isn't. Are you just going to let me bleed out over here? Blair blurts harshly. Her words cut through the concern on the Imperial's face. Right. He clears his throat and lifts that strip of cloth to Blair's forehead. Is that A look of repulsion pinches her features. Sand? Oh, yeah. After wrapping her head with the makeshift bandage, Lenny ties a knot against her hair. I just recently got back from the scorches. What? I was a part of that resistance that failed, he says casually. I even rescued Pei from the enforcer and took them to Door. But then they vanished from our camp. It was a whole thing. He sighs. That's why I came back to Ilya, actually. I was going to smuggle Peyton out of the kingdom before I found out Kit had no intention of killing her. Death had not expected that. Over the years, she has collected more than a few martyrs and radicals and those ravenous for justice. But Lenny does not look like the rest. No, he is still a boy with a heart much too soft, a luxury that revolution cannot afford. Kindness is rarely jarring enough to instill change, you see, so cruelty is often justified by pure intentions. Casually, the Imperial lifts that worn tunic again to rip more fabric from its hem. Blair stares at the sandy garment, her voice lethal. Are these the sweaty clothes you wore in the scorches? Lenny has the audacity to snort. I tell you I was a resistance member and that is the first thing you ask? I don't care about your treason, she declares. It's honestly unsurprising considering you're a hyper and your best friend is an ordinary. What I do care about, however, is your filthy clothing on my open wound. He winces. It's not ideal, I'll admit, but I don't have any other clothes. I could strangle you. Save your energy. Lenny leans in to examine the slice on her forearm. Besides, he flashes her a smile she happily scowls at. I did just save your life. He had. Death notes that this does not sit well with Blair. Did you mean what you said? She asks, her tone indifferent. About how me living is more torturous than death? Mara perks up at such a direct mention. When Lenny glances at his assignment, moonlight splatters his face with pale freckles of its own. Was it true? Blair seems to be at war with herself. I wanted to be a baker, she finally blurts. Yet another unexpected discovery this evening. Unlike Lenny, the telly seems entirely too cutting and cruel for such an admission of self. Wisely, Lenny does not laugh. What? Since we are admitting things, she forces out, you should know that I always wanted to be a baker. The Imperial blinks. This is then followed by the predicted laughter. I'm sorry, I just can't imagine you wanting to make anyone feel warm and fuzzy inside. Well, there are only about 4 occupations you can have in this plague-forsaken kingdom, she retorts, though the venom in her voice begins to fade. And when I was a little girl, baking was the only thing in my life I could control. Every measurement, every spice. It was mine to manipulate. Death can understand this. In another life, she, too, yearned for control. Now Mara is at the mercy of the Moors. Lenny tenderly wraps the gash beneath her torn tunic sleeve. So? He sounds hesitant, as though at any moment Blair might run away from this sudden vulnerability. Why are you not a baker, then? She exhales slowly. My mother wanted a boy, a strong male to take my father's place as general one day. Both Mara and the telly roll their eyes. So, from the moment of my birth, I was a disappointment. Mother knew I would have to work extra hard to earn my father's position, because for whatever reason, being a woman is perceived as a disadvantage. Death is beginning to understand this difficult human, perhaps even like her. Lenny holds his assignment's gaze, silently urging this spilling of honesty from her lips. By the age of 4, she continues curtly, Mother had me training for half the day. My power was the only thing she'd ever really liked about me. So she forced me to become what she never could be. Lethal, harsh, a condescending bitch. Or so I've heard. A shadowed smile lifts the Imperial's lips. We are both allowed an insulting nickname. Blair smothers him with a flat look. Anyway, it became Mother's sole mission to mold me into her perfect creation. She taught me to intimidate, never show fear. The princes were viewed as my competition, an obstacle I needed to conquer in everything. She pauses, looking annoyed by her own unsolicited admission. And I couldn't help but resent them. Not because my mother wanted me to, but because they were allowed to live. They had so much power, and yet the boys got to be just that. Boys. She is tearing at the skin on her palm now. I was never allowed friends or fun or food that I enjoyed. My life was not my own. And when I grew tired of forcing the same tasteless slop down my throat, I decided to make that the one thing I could control. I would sneak into the kitchen, stealing spices, fruit, anything I could get my hands on. I wondered why Gale seemed to know you so well, Lenny murmurs. She knew I was taking her supplies. The telly almost smiles at the thought. And yet, she never tried to stop me. Maybe she realized it was my escape from the callous girl Mother required I be. But then, her voice grows chilled. The sergeant caught me. Sergeant, Lenny echoes in understanding. So, it's your mother. She hates when I call her that, which is precisely why I do. Blair says simply. It's fitting, though. She spews more orders than my father ever has. So when she discovered I had a passion that didn't benefit my fate as a general, she declared that baking was nonsense and ordered I never do it again. Continuing my family's legacy is all I'm meant for. Again, Death feels a pang of sympathy. Lenny leans in, listening closely. Mara is surprised he can go so long without speaking. So, I made a deal with her that day, Blair continues. If I won the purging trials, bringing more honor to our family than any general could, she would have to let me go. She looks down at the angry skin on her palm. That was 4 years ago, and I spent every day after becoming the harshest, most lethal version of myself. You had to win, the Imperial murmurs. It makes sense now, but why didn't you just run away? I was young, she retorts. I knew Mother would find me and call off our deal. But now, I have nothing to lose. Her words are clipped. In those trials, it was my life I was playing for. And if I won, I wouldn't have to live under the sergeant's control or the king's command. I could start over, be who I want, who I would have been before Mother made me this way. It is like looking in a mirror, Mara realizes regrettably. Without ever seeing her, this girl knows death more intimately than most. For they both burn with a passion that fate laughs at. Words continue to pour from Blair, threatening to drown her. So when I killed that girl in the bowl, Adina, I thought it would be all worth it in the end. I was supposed to win those purging trials. I had calculated my score, knew that if I finished that maze first, I would be free. Lenny hangs his head. But the resistance attacked. Yes, Mara did remember collecting the sea of limp souls from that sandy arena. They were all quite content to be dead, she recalls. For most possessed a certain calmness that only accompanies purpose. Hope. And there was no winner for the 6th ever purging trials, Blair muses. Mother refused to hold up her end of the bargain, so it was all for nothing. All the malice I met the world with, All the blood I spilt in the arena. Her voice sounds oddly strained. That was my first deliberate kill. I really thought she was a criminal, but Adina's death didn't even let me live. So yes, she states plainly, what you said to the telly was true. A stiff silence swells between them. For the first time, Death feels as though she should not be intruding on this moment. The pale moonlight peeking down on the tense scene paints Lenny's lashes silver. Blair must notice this too, because she is staring rather intently at him. That would be a first. So now you have nothing to say? She finally spits. The Imperial smiles thinly. We are made this way. That is what you said to me about, well, bitches. And I think I understand that now. He looks at Blair, as though this is the first time truly seeing her. Mara is quietly envious. She has never been on the other side of such a stare. Not on this side of eternity. The telly nods distantly. My mother was made too. With a weak power, she was forced to feign strength. It's why she hates me for wanting to waste mine on passion. I'm sorry, Lenny offers slowly. About all of it. I'm sorry you had to go through that. His words only remind Blair to slam that stony facade back into place. She straightens with a wince. I don't need your pity. No, you don't. He agrees. That's why I'm offering you my help instead. The Imperial nods, his mind elsewhere. You're going to get out of here, and I won't let my reputation get in the way of that. But Blair's facade is crumbling again. You were going to find a way that didn't make you look even more weak. Thanks, yeah, I remember. Lenny cuts in swiftly. But that attack earlier, that was a reminder. He swallows. It's time to cut the shit and face it. I will always be weak. You were right. No one expects me to actually protect you. There is a forced tone of hilarity in the words. One Death is certain he has honed over the years. He is likely used to diminishing himself before others get the chance, hiding behind his humor. It's a sad cycle, Mara decides. Fine. Blair folds her arms, wincing yet again. Then I'll teach you how to be powerful. The Imperial finds this funny. Shit, are you being nice to me? How hard did you hit your head? I can demonstrate with your skull. Look. Lenny lifts his hands defensively. I appreciate the shockingly kind offer, but I'm a hyper. Powerful just isn't a word that applies to me. That's because you're only relying on your ability. The telly drawls lazily. Real power resides in how you're perceived. It's all an act. And you? The Imperial asks slowly. Are you all an act? Blair is drenched in moonlight when she lifts her chin. The act is all I've ever known. Yes, Death decides. It is like looking in a mirror.